Hello guys, this is your friend. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Became Unstoppable with Konan and Hot Femme Kyuubi in His Harem Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. Wasn't me, Naruto said, almost shouting from indignation. Turning to look at Kakashi behind him, his voice took on a pleading note. Kakashi-sensei, please believe me. Yesterday, I was eating ramen at Ichiraku, and then I played shogi with Shikamaru the whole night. But Kakashi merely kept his silence while Tsunade said, until the truth is revealed, we'll be sending you to Hazuka Castle. What's this Hazuka Castle? Naruto asked. It's a shinobi prison delegated to hidden grass by the other villages, Kakashi finally replied. Anyone can enter there but not everyone can leave, Yamato also added, his arms crossed in front of his chest. It's a place where they restrain problematic shinobi sent to them by the other various villages. Hearing that, Naruto couldn't keep his calm anymore. But I didn't do anything. He yelled, gesticulating wildly with his arms. You can ask Ayame-chan and you can ask Shikamaru too. I was with them the entire evening and night. Anyone could have used a henge to look like me. Besides, Kumogakure is like super far away. I'd need like a week or more just to get there and come back, wouldn't I? It doesn't make any sense. Someone must be trying to get me away from the village. Don't be absurd, Naruto. Tsunade yelled back at him and slapped her desk with her palms as she stood up. Kumo wouldn't risk triggering a war on mere suspicions when a foe as dangerous as the Akatsuki is looming over all of us like that. Also, everyone knows your speciality in shadow clones and how much chakra you have. How am I absurd? Kumo also tried to kidnap Hinata-chan when she was little and then blamed us for their shinobi getting killed. I don't want to hear it. Take him away, Tsunade said. Seeing that they wouldn't listen to him, Naruto's hands instinctively went to form the seal for the shadow clone technique, but, as if he had been waiting for that moment the whole time, Yamato suddenly clasped his hands together like in a prayer and shouted. Mokuten. 4 pillars prison. 4 wooden pillars burst from the floor coiled around Naruto's neck and forearms like snakes, completely immobilizing him, before finally taking the shape of a cubic cage. Wait a second. Naruto said desperately as Tsunade stripped his shinobi headband signifying his allegiance to Konoha. It wasn't me. I'm being framed. On his knees, with his hands bound behind his back, a wooden vine wrapped around his neck, and imprisoned in a cage, Naruto pleaded again. It wasn't me. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura-chan. Ba-chan. You know me. I would never do something like that. It wasn't me. I haven't done anything. Asterism. Hey. So what did you do? A skinny middle-aged man with bluish-gray hair and metallic cuffs on his wrists tried to start a conversation while all the new prisoners were waiting in queue for the mandatory body check. Angry from the fire seal that had been placed on him only minutes before by the leader of the prison and already on the point of exploding with anger from the injustice of having been imprisoned despite being innocent, Naruto shouted at him right away. I already said I haven't done anything, damn it. Chill out, man, the middle-aged prisoner said and leaned back to put some distance between him and the temperamental blonde. Shrugging his shoulders and looking up, he continued casually, as for me, I made a mistake during a mission. Seeing that Naruto began to pay attention to what he was saying, the blue-haired man continued with a small sigh. I was supposed to wipe out a village of civilians, but my conscience struck and I let a kid get away. Then, my village found out. What's wrong with that? Naruto asked, genuinely confused and inwardly disturbed by his confession. The middle-aged man threw him a strange look. Which village are you from? Konohagakure. Naruto replied. Hee. Looks like Konoha is a pretty soft village, huh? The older prisoner said mockingly. What did you say? Naruto shot back in annoyance. The older man looked at him as if he was a dumb and naive kid as he explained. To a shinobi, the village's command is absolute. Shinobi are tools. We kill who we are told to kill and we steal what we are told to steal. But it looks like that's not how it rolls in your hidden village, huh? In spite of the situation he was in, the Hokage had sent him to prison despite being innocent. Naruto's loyalty to Konoha was still strong. Don't you dare talk bad about the hidden leaf when you don't know anything about it. He yelled and grabbed him by the collar of his top. Just you wait and see. I'll get out of here soon and give the guys who framed me a lesson they'll never forget. Before things could escalate any further, a fellow prisoner wearing a bandana intervened from the side. That's enough. That man is right. This Hazuka Castle is a gathering spot for people who no longer have the pretext where villages cover for them for what they've done. A thief is a thief. A murderer is a murderer. We can't say things like, it was for the sake of my village. We have no excuse anymore. We're all just getting what we deserve, reaping what we sowed. The more he was talking to others, the more Naruto was getting pissed off. Nobody wanted to believe that he was innocent. I'm not making any excuses. I've never done any of these things. He shouted incensed. At that moment one of the wardens called out from beyond the prison door. Bandana, it's your turn. Before answering the warden's call, the bandana-wearing prisoner told Naruto one last thing. You should have realized by now that you've fallen into a deep pit. You shouldn't try to make it even deeper. Naruto, being his usual stubborn self, however, had not even considered listening to their advice. That very night, he tried to break out of prison by substituting himself with a shadow clone. But the side effect of using chakra while the fire seal was active on him was too great. Unable to use his ninjutsu or his physical capabilities to their fullest, and not even water and tree walking, he was swiftly captured and thrown into a solitary confinement cell. 3 days later. Just defeat Mui, and the seal on your chest will disappear. At an unknown voice's instigation when he had been in solitary confinement, after coming out of the hole, before even getting the chance to have lunch, Naruto jumped at Mui, the leader of the prison. I heard that the Tenro seal will disappear if I defeat you. I don't wanna attack someone unprovoked, but if that's the only way, I have no other choice. His face the epitome of indifference, Mui said blandly. Forget it. You cannot defeat me in your current state. Won't know it till I try it. Naruto retorted undaunted and lunged at him, swinging his punch widely. But Mui easily sidestepped his punch and smashed his foot into his stomach. Using the same bland tone from before, as if he had not just kicked someone's air out of their lungs, Mui asked. What is your village to you? When Naruto got up and lunged at him with another wild swing of his punch, Mui kicked him in the stomach once more, sending him flying. Have you ever killed someone whom you had no resentment for, just to protect your village? Struggling to catch his breath from the painful kicks, Naruto said. Are you saying we can't protect our villages without doing that? That's right. Don't with me. Naruto screamed and tried to lunge at him again, but a fiery heat suddenly pulsed in his torso and he collapsed on his hands and his knees before he could reach his enemy. Even if you didn't do it personally, someone else had to do it. If you've never stained your hands with the blood of innocence, you've lived a fortunate life. But your fortunate life is the result of other people dying and other shinobi from your village taking care of the dirty work instead of you. Not receiving an answer from the boy who was curled up and coughing on the ground, Mui said. It hurts to even breathe, doesn't it? You must be thinking, this can't be happening. That you couldn't have been hurt that badly by a move like that. But when you fight, you will unconsciously draw on your chakra to enhance your strength and speed. And if your chakra as much as twitches, the Tenro seal gets triggered and starts burning up your body. As Naruto was sweating up a puddle from the pain of having his skin and his innards burned by the fire seal, Mui continued. Let me tell you something. No matter how much you've had to bear because of your village, they don't care at all. No matter how great you used to be, it amounts to nothing once you are no longer needed. Your struggle is pointless. You cannot escape from this prison. From the day it was founded, nobody has ever broken out of Hazuka Castle. Furthermore, even if you were to break out somehow, you no longer have a place in Konoha. As the other prison guards grabbed Naruto from his arms and started dragging him away, Mui told him a few last words. You would do well to remember that it was your Hokage that had sent you here. You were discarded just like a broken tool that is no longer needed. You had been cast out. Asterism. The punishment for breaking the rules of the prison again in such a short time was a longer sentence in the whole. This time, Naruto was sentenced to 5 days in solitary confinement instead of 3. Dull gray walls, a cold concrete floor and a square window even more narrow than his head were the only things in the cell. How could they do something like this to me? Naruto thought and punched the wall with his fist in despair. After everything I did for the village. After how many times I risked my life for them. After how many times I saved them. It was less than a month ago that the godlike leader of the Akatsuki had attacked Konoha and literally erased it off the face of the earth, turning the strongest hidden village in the world into a massive crater. Nearly 80% of Konoha's civilians and more than half of the village's shinobi force had been massacred by pain. However, not only that Naruto had put his life on the line to fight against such a fearsome enemy, but he had somehow even convinced Nagato Uzumaki to bring everyone back to life. Never in Konohagakure no Sato's history had anyone done something as incredible as that for the village. Naruto had become the hero of the Leaf. Everyone had finally acknowledged his hard work, strength, and character. Yet, there he was now, only a few weeks after being hailed as a hero, framed for a crime that he had never committed and thrown into a prison famous for holding the worst shinobi criminals on the continent. The injustice of it all made him boil with anger. Not for the first time during this second stay in the hole, Mui's words resounded in his ears. Let me tell you something. No matter how much you've had to bear because of your village, they don't care at all. You were discarded just like a broken tool that is no longer needed. He closed his eyes tightly and clenched his fists. Of all the people, Tsunade had been the last he had ever expected to do something like that to him. He had looked up at her as if she was family. Naruto calling her Ba-chan was not simply to annoy her. To him, Tsunade had been almost like an auntie, or like a grandmother. Laying down on the cold concrete floor, he turned on his other side and let out a shuddering breath. 5 days in complete isolation and loneliness was not a short time for someone like him. Ever since he had become a shinobi, Naruto had hardly ever been completely alone. Even when he was not with his teammates or other friends from Konoha 11, in the worst-case scenario, he still had his shadow clones to keep him company. On some lonely days, as lame as it sounded, he would play card games with his clones or even football. But now, he was completely alone. There were no teammates, no missions, no friends, no Ichiraku, not even his shadow clones. There was nothing to distract him from his darker thoughts, nothing to take his mind away from his loneliness. There was nothing to stop him from thinking about the injustice he had been dealt at the hands of the village for which he had shed his blood and sweat numerous times. Even I can tell that hatred is spreading. I wanted to do something about it, but I don't know what. But I have faith that there will come a time when people can truly understand one another. But as his deceased mentor's words came to the front of his mind, Naruto couldn't hold in his anger anymore. What understanding each other? Understanding they threw me in prison without letting me defend myself. I didn't even have a trial. After all I've done for the village, they didn't even want to hear my side. After all that I've sacrificed for them. After all, he trailed off and broke into a sob. He couldn't remember when was the last time that he had cried. Damn it. Damn it all. He shouted and punched the floor repeatedly with the side of his fist. It was while he was crying that an explosion boomed from outside and the entire castle was rocked from its foundations. Greatly startled, Naruto jumped up to his feet and rushed to the tiny window in the back of his prison cell, trying to get a glimpse of what was going on. The gloomy skies above Hazuka Castle were covered by an endless swarm of white butterflies, and in the midst of it all, an angel-winged woman floated calmly, her black and red Akatsuki robe swaying softly in the wind. She was not shouting when she spoke, but her calm voice was heard in every corner of the castle prison. Naruto was stunned. Is that Konan? What is she doing here? Pain's invasion of Konohagakure happened around a month ago, so Naruto had not forgotten about Nagato Uzumaki's right-hand subordinate. Is she here to break me out? He couldn't wrap his head around the idea. He had made peace with Nagato and Konan, and after Nagato sacrificed himself to bring back to life everyone that he had killed, Naruto and Konan separated on a good note. But he had never envisioned a scenario where a former Akatsuki member of all people would one day come to save him from prison, right after his own friends in his village had turned on him, no less. Asterism. Standing on top of the tall walls surrounding Hazuka Castle, the leader of the prison, Mui, glared at the blue-haired woman flying in the sky. From the day Hazuka Castle was founded, none of the prisoners have managed to break out. Go away, Akatsuki. Your kind is not welcome here. The other wardens looked at their leader inwardly startled. Even after the angel-like woman had already attacked the castle, Mui still didn't retaliate. But, in their memory, Mui was not the kind of shinobi to ignore such acts or the type to hesitate when dealing with his enemies. They didn't know that, as one of the highest-ranking shinobi in Hidden Grass, Mui was well aware of Konan's identity and her real strength. A kunoichi that was capable of flight, especially an S-ranked criminal, would almost always have the advantage in battle. I tried giving you a way out. It's all on your head now, Konan said, and her body dispersed into countless tiny paper butterflies. In a matter of moments, the swarm of paper butterflies covered the entirety of Hazuka Castle's walls. His eyes widening at the sight of the thousands of explosive tags that covered the walls and building all over the castle's courtyard, Mui let out a shout at the top of his lungs. Everyone, get away from the walls. Now. But his warning came a little too late. The majority of shinobi and kunoichi among his subordinates heeded his words and quickly jumped to safety, but most of the wardens at the blood prison were not chakra users. They couldn't escape in time. A chain of explosions was suddenly triggered, and the ancient and majestic walls surrounding the castle collapsed in a heap of debris, fire, and dust. With the walls suddenly being brought down like that, hundreds of prisoners cheered at the unexpected windfall and broke into a mad dash towards freedom. But Mui didn't even spare them a glance. As long as the celestial prison technique was active on their bodies, none of the inmates would be able to escape. The moment they went past a certain distance from the caster of that technique, they would combust from within and burn to death. Instead of wasting time fussing over the escaped convicts, Mui went through a short sequence of hand seals and inhaled deeply before spewing out an enormous conic wave of fire. The sky was covered with flames and the whole world seemed to catch on fire. Suddenly, the whistling sound made by a sharp object cutting the air reached his ears, and, not even a second later, a 4-foot-wide paper chakram pierced through his sea of fire seemingly unaffected and nearly decapitated him in the process as well. It was only his instincts as an elite Jonin that allowed him to dodge it by the skin of his teeth. He couldn't rejoice at his survival just yet, because only a moment after nearly grazing the tip of his nose, the paper chakram's trajectory made a 180 turn and came back like a boomerang. A split second before the paper chakram hit him, Mui substituted himself with one of the wardens watching helplessly from the side. A wet squelching sound was heard as the warden was sliced in two from head to toe, the poor man not knowing even at the moment of his death what had killed him. Taking advantage of the brief respite, Mui went through another sequence of hand seals and jumped sharply towards the blue-haired woman floating in midair. Kaden. Heavenly prison fire sword. He screamed, and, as a long dark crimson flaming blade came out from his arm, he slashed with it at Konan in a wide arc. But right before the flaming blade could incinerate her, Konan dispersed in a flurry of paper tags which quickly flew and reformed behind Mui's back. As if he had been waiting for her to do something like that from the beginning, Mui swiftly turned and thrust his flame-coated palm at her while shouting. Kaden. Tenro. It was his most used technique. It was the fire seal that he used on all the shinobi that had been imprisoned in the Hazuka castle, the jutsu that would seal their chakra away, rendering them no stronger than civilians. When he felt his palm touching solid matter, a small smirk of satisfaction appeared at the corner of his lips at having prevailed over such a powerful and troublesome opponent like Konan. No matter who they were, the moment that his celestial prison technique took effect on them, they would lose. But 1 second later, the blue-haired kunoichi started glowing with an ominous light. Any ninja worth their salt knew what was about to happen next, but, unfortunately, he was a step too late to get away. The Konan on whom he had cast his tenro was nothing more than a paper clone consisting of a few hundred explosive tags. A terrible explosion shook the entirety of the castle's courtyard, and all the wardens and convicts fighting against each other at that moment froze in their tracks. For the inmates who had been imprisoned for a long time and for the wardens that had worked under Mui's orders for years, Mui had been solidified in their minds as a powerful, nigh unbeatable shinobi due to his one-shot win tenro seal. He was one of the strongest and most capable shinobi of the hidden grass. To see that Mui collapsing to the ground as a corpse charred beyond recognition, they could not get over their surprise momentarily. Knowing that everyone's attention was focused on her at that moment, Konan said, "I will ask one more time. Where is Uzumaki Naruto?" Her manner of speech was calm, but nobody was fooled by that false lack of danger coming from her. Having watched her demolish the large walls of the castle and then making short work of Mui, her calmness and the myriad of paper tags swarming around her made her look even more dangerous. Asterism. The moment that Mui died, Naruto felt the tenro seal that was suppressing his chakra vanish. His hands making the familiar hand sign for summoning a shadow clone, a blue orb of chakra appeared in the palm of his hand next, and the outer wall of the hole he had been imprisoned in was blasted to smithereens. But as he jumped out of the cell, his steps paused when he noticed the destruction everywhere around him and the angel-like woman floating in the middle of the now ruined courtyard of the castle. "Konan, why are you here?" he asked, a note in his neck. The swarm of paper butterflies flying around the courtyard converged on Konan, and she slowly materialized and floated down in front of Naruto. "It looks like I made it here in time," Konan said. Leaving aside his ripped and ragged clothes and the tear marks that could be seen on his dusty face, Naruto appeared to be relatively well, uninjured. "How did you know I was here?" Naruto asked another question. "And why? Why did you come to save me? Have you forgotten our promise? The Hidden Rain and I will always support you," Konan said. It was then that Naruto remembered the words that Konan had told him several weeks ago after Nagato's death. "Yahiko and Nagato meant everything to me. Yahiko's dream, and Nagato's dream, if both of their dreams had been passed to you, then you now embody their dreams. Nagato put his faith in you. So will I. We, the Hidden Rain, will pursue their dreams together with you." Naruto had forgotten about those words. In truth, he had been so busy helping with the reconstruction of the village after Pain had turned into a crater that he had not really thought a second time about Konan since then. However, it looked like Konan was a woman of her word. Her promise had not been just empty words, she had really come to help him when she caught wind of his situation. Having spent nearly 8 days in the hole, his anger at the injustice that he had suffered, the pain he felt at Konoha's betrayal, and the feeling of misery stemming from being abandoned by the ones that they had seen as his friends or even family, all those negative emotions had long since reached the point of boiling. But the more his anger was raging at Konoha, the deeper was his gratitude for the one person that had come to rescue him in his darkest hour. "Thank you," he said and looked down, unable to speak another word. The two of them sank into momentary silence, the sounds of fighting and the screams coming from their surroundings taking over instead. "Konoha had cast you out. What will you do from now on?" Konan asked eventually. That question left Naruto stumped for words for a while. I don't know. He had never imagined being in a situation like this. He had never thought about a scenario where his sensei, his Ba-chan, and his friends would turn their back on him, a world where Konoha would throw him away. Quote. After a few moments, Konan said, "We should leave first. You can decide on your future course of action after you've had time to rest and think about it with a clear head." Coming closer to Naruto, two large white wings formed at her back as she said, "Take my hands. We are going to fly away." But just as Naruto and Konan clasped their hands together and were about to take off, the pavement underneath their feet cracked and a tree branch sprouted seemingly out of nowhere. It grew out at an alarming rate and it attempted to capture both of them at once, splitting in two from the middle and getting more branches as it continued to grow. Konan swiftly dispersed into a swarm of papers and Naruto jumped away just as fast as well, avoiding the wood-style technique effortlessly. Back in the hole that he had broken out of, one of Naruto's shadow clones disappeared with a popping sound and a red pigmentation appeared around the real Naruto's eyes, his pupils transforming into horizontal bars. While he had been stuck in solitary confinement, at the cost of the terrible pain that came with forcing himself to use chakra while under the effects of the Tenro seal, Naruto had created a shadow clone to slowly gather natural energy. It was going to be his ticket out of this prison, but Konan ended up coming to his rescue before he could attempt to break out a second time. Entering his sage mode, it took only a moment for all the chakra signatures in the vicinity to appear clearly in his mind's eye. While the wooden branch that had tried to entrap him and Konan had already been an obvious giveaway, his sage senses confirmed his suspicions. Beyond the smoke, fire, and dust that obscured one's visibility in the castle's courtyard, just outside the castle's collapsed walls there were over a dozen people with whom he was very close to. Or he used to. "Naruto, why are you with the Akatsuki? Get away from her as fast as you can." An overly familiar yell came from beyond the heap of debris that had once served as the castle's walls. Barely a moment after he heard that yell, a huge octopus tentacle split the air as it slapped in Konan's direction. Konan was just about to evade it by turning herself into a swarm of paper butterflies again, but Naruto unexpectedly jumped in front of her and stopped the enormous tentacle with his body, catching it in his arms. A grunt of exertion came from Naruto as he pulled on the tentacle with all the might his sage mode was capable of, and all the smoke and dust filling the air were suddenly dispersed as an enormous being was lifted in the air and slammed into the other side of the courtyard, demolishing an entire pagoda as it crashed into it. With the smoke and the dust in the courtyard dispersed by the sudden movement of the gigantic tailed beast, Naruto could finally see the appearance of the ones that attacked him. Most of them were wearing either Konoha's or Kumo's standard uniforms. Apart from the Kumogakure shinobi and kunoichi that he wasn't familiar with, Naruto easily recognized Yamato, Kakashi, Tsunade, Sakura, Team 10 and Team 8, Team Guy, Shizune and Sai. "What are you doing, Naruto?" Tsunade shouted. "Why would you attack Killer Bee? Why are you protecting that woman? That's all you have to say?" Naruto asked through gritted teeth. "You sent me here to rot in jail and that's all you have to say?" "I'm protecting her because she was the one who rescued me. She came to save me after you threw me in prison despite being innocent." He yelled at her incensed. "Oh, would you stop whining already?" Sakura said in a fed-up voice as she stomped towards him and her fist back to smack the crap out of him, just like she always did. "Not this time, Sakura," Naruto said, not using the usual honorifics, as he caught her punch with his hand. "Let go of me, idiot." She screamed at him and back her other fist, this time intending of using a chakra-enhanced punch to make Naruto come back to his senses. As he was currently in the sage mode, however, Naruto noticed that the rage that had been fermenting inside of him for nearly 2 weeks blew up at that moment. Before Sakura could hit him with her devastating punch, Naruto yanked her towards him from the hand that he was holding and smashed his knee into her gut, making spittle come out from her mouth. Still holding her by her right arm, he threw her violently into a nearby building, completely destroying the wall with the force of his throw. The pink-haired girl slumped on the pavement unconscious. What is the meaning of this, Naruto? Kakashi screamed in disbelief. Why would you attack your comrades? But when Naruto turned his head at him, Kakashi involuntarily tensed when he saw the slit crimson pupils in his eyes. What kind of comrades send one of their own to the worst prison on the continent without any evidence, just because some rival hidden village demanded so? Naruto shouted, his voice sounding rougher than normal, a dark tinge to it. Naruto, this is a misunderstanding, Yamato tried to reason with him. It was our strategy to find out what the hidden grass had been plotting this entire time by sending you here. We've been stationed close by the entire time in case anything happened. I see, so it was a mission, Naruto said as if everything finally made sense. That's right, Yamato was quick to confirm, relief settling on his face when he saw that Naruto was convinced that easily by his words. You really thought I was going to believe that bullshit? Do you think that I'm that stupid? Naruto said, his voice quivering as he barely held his rage in. Outside of his control, the birthmarks on his cheeks thickened and darkened, the nails of his hands grew into claws and a red aura visible even to the eye appeared around his body. He isn't lying, Naruto. It was a plan created by Konoha and Kumo together. Trust me, Naruto, Shikamaru began to say only for Naruto to cut him off midway. Trust you. We played shogi the entire night before I was arrested. You could have vouched for me but you didn't. Shikamaru became silent, understanding that no matter what he said at that moment, considering Naruto's current mental state, it would only worsen the situation. How many times have I risked my life for the village? How many times have I saved Konohagakure? Who among any of you has done more for the village than I did? Naruto screamed this time, finally releasing all his pent-up anger and frustration. And what did I get for it? You threw me in prison despite that I was innocent. You cast me out, he said, tears falling from his eyes but evaporating in the corrosive chakra surrounding his body long before they could roll down his cheeks. He had always been an outcast. Ever since he was a young kid, the villagers treated him like a menace, they talked badly about him when they thought he couldn't hear them, he was shunned by the parents of other kids in the academy and told to stay away from their sons, and it wasn't just once that he noticed the hatred and contempt in their eyes when they looked at him. However, after graduating from the academy, he had saved the village more than once, culminating a bit over a month ago with defeating the leader of the Akatsuki and convincing him to bring all the casualties of his invasion back to life. He had thought that things were finally coming around for him. Especially after saving the village from pain, he had been praised as the hero of the leaf. It was all a sham, he said, his voice now calm and his tears dried. I've had enough of Konoha. But when Naruto turned around, Tsunade shouted after him. Do you realize what you're doing, Naruto? Are you going to defect from the village? I know exactly what I'm doing, he said without turning around. What about your promise? You swore that you'd become the Hokage. Are you going to renege on that? Naruto said nothing in return. Instead, he told the Konan. Let's go, Konan. Receiving a nod of confirmation from her, the two of them jumped away, intending to leave. However, it was not going to be that easy for them to escape. Having recovered by then from the brutal slam, the transformed killer bee sent half of his enormous tentacles at them and he wasn't the only one attacking them. Yamato cast another wood-style technique to entrap them and Kakashi slapped his palm against the ground, summoning one of his dogs. You must be crazy if you think you can escape from all of us. Gatsuga. Kiba yelled before he and Akamaru cast the special taijutsu move of the Inuzuka clan. Naruto cancelled his sage mode and quickly put his hands in a cross as he ran. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Over 1,000 clones suddenly made the large courtyard of the Huzuki castle appear crowded and their voices made the air shudder as half of those 1,000 clones shouted together. Henge. 500 clones took on the appearance of Konan, imitating her perfectly before they all partnered up with one of the normal clones and scattered in pairs of two everywhere. Despite initially having superiority in numbers and combat strength two on their side, Konoha and Kumo's shinobi and kunoichi could only watch helplessly as the stupidly high number of clones scattered in all directions two by two. They didn't even attempt to stop them anymore. It was impossible to catch over 1,000 clones that had Naruto's capabilities with only so few of them. One more. A blonde woman shouted after downing a whole bottle of sake in one breath. One more coming, the bartender answered meekly and served her 3 more bottles instead of just one. By the time she was done drinking, it was in the wee hours of the morning. Barely keeping herself standing, she wobbled out of the bar slowly, leaning against walls and fences as she made her way towards the outskirts of the village. She didn't want to return to the Hokage Tower just yet. Though she could dispel the alcohol flooding her system in a second, she refused to do so. She needed that buzz. She didn't feel strong enough to deal with reality without its help at that moment. However, the cool air of the morning brought back some clarity, and along with it, memories of the previous day started playing at the front of her mind. I'm protecting her because she was the one who rescued me. She came to save me after you threw me in prison despite being innocent. Maybe because she was drunk, or maybe because she was simply at her limit, Tsunade started crying softly as she wobbled down the empty streets all alone. Things weren't supposed to end up like that. She had never imagined that her decision to leave Naruto clueless about the truth would bring about such an outcome. She had just not been able to trust his intelligence and tell him that he was being sent on a mission, instead of letting him believe that he got cast out and abandoned. I should have pressured the Raikage to send Killer Bee to Hazuka Castle instead of Naruto. I should have been more insistent. Konoha and Kumo suspected that Kusagakure was preparing for something big, and they decided to nip it in the bud because they couldn't afford to let them start another war, not while the Akatsuki threatened to take over the world by acquiring all the tailed beast and doing God knew what with them. In order to catch them red-handed, however, they needed to throw some bait. In this scenario, the only thing that would bait Kusa into acting out was to send them a Jinchuriki, someone with chakra reserves large enough to tempt Kusagakure into opening the box of ultimate bliss. But Uzumaki Naruto and Killer Bee were the only 2 Jinchuriki left, and the Raikage considered Bee as his brother in all but blood. Therefore, Naruto was the only option left, as much as he was unfit for an espionage mission. Tsunade wiped her face with her palms and let out a shuddering breath. How am I going to make it up to him? She thought bitterly. Naruto's reaction had caught her off guard, but thinking about it again, it was only natural for someone to react like that in his shoes. However, he was Naruto. Naruto never remained mad at his precious people for long, and he was extremely quick to forgive. Many things that would be highly offensive if done to other people, Naruto usually accepted them without saying anything, like the way Sakura often used him as a punching bag. But everyone had a limit, and, even with how forgiving and tolerant Naruto was, Tsunade understood that being thrown in jail so cold-heartedly despite being innocent had been the last straw that broke the camel's back. I can only hope he has calmed down a little in the meantime. She wished that he would at least be willing to let her properly explain the situation and apologize when they met next time. She hoped he would stop being mad and return to the village soon. Suddenly, 2 hands burst from the ground and grabbed her by the ankles. Normally, someone would find it next to impossible to sneak up on her, but, as she was drunk and consumed by her thoughts of guilt, Tsunade didn't notice the chakra signature of her stalker until it was too late. This is bad. Tsunade wanted to shout, only to find out she couldn't move her mouth or any part of her body at all. In the next moment, she was covered by black lines and symbols from head to toe. It was a cursed seal. When her attacker grabbed her by the ankles, they also placed a cursed seal on her. Not even a second later, the blade of a tanto glinted in the moonlight as it slashed towards her neck. An earthly yellow haze of chakra burst out of Tsunade's body and, With an enraged scream, she broke the cursed seal's paralysis with her monstrous brute strength. With the attacker's tanto now only inches away from her neck, Tsunade unexpectedly opened her mouth and caught the blade with her teeth. The attacker was forced to give up on his weapon when she bit on the blade and shattered it as if it was made of graphite, not chakra metal. In the next moment, Tsunade's fist smashed into her enemy's chest, their body exploding into a fine red mist from her unreal strength. To think that my own Anbu would try to kill me one day, and in the middle of the village no less, Tsunade said, having recognized the white porcelain mask of the Anbu operative who used to be part of her personal guard. Your Anbu. Anbu is not yours. Anbu don't serve you, it serves the village. Tsunade heard the voice of an old man coming from behind the trees. As he stepped into the moonlight, his identity became as clear as day. The old and wrinkled face half covered by bandages, the right arm perpetually in a cast and the cane, it was Danzo Shimura. Jiraiya did tell me to be wary of you, but I've never thought you'd go as far as to try to assassinate the Hokage. Has old age made you go completely senile? Tsunade said. My mind has never been clearer, I assure you of that, Tsunade, Danzo said as he started taking out the bandages and the golden cast around his right arm. Only a madman would attempt to commit the highest treason, Tsunade said with a scoff. Highest treason? Hardly. I serve Konoha. Everything I do is for the sake of the village. Danzo said coolly. Then where were you when the leader of the Akatsuki invaded the village? Tsunade screamed at him, finally losing her patience. My slug summons were spread over the entire village, but I didn't see a glimpse of you anywhere. I died of chakra exhaustion from healing as many people as I could, and thousands of other shinobi and kunoichi lost their lives in battle while you were lurking like a coward in some god-forsaken bunker, waiting for the danger to pass. Was that also for the sake of the village, you old hypocrite? And in what way does it even benefit Konoha if I died now when the Akatsuki is trying to take over the world? Danzo was not one to let his emotions get the better of him, but Tsunade's words made his face stiffen. They had hit a sore spot. Danzo's cowardice in his youth was what had made Tobirama choose Sarutobi Hiruzen as his successor instead of him. To this very day, many decades later, it was still Danzo's biggest regret in life. It's because of the precarious future ahead of us that you need to be removed. You allowed the last Uchiha to go rogue and haven't eliminated him or at least recovered his Dujutsu even after 3 years passed. You failed in capturing the three-tailed beast. And now, you alienated Konoha's ultimate weapon, the nine-tailed Jinchuriki. You are not fit to. Danzo's words were cut short as the upper half of his body exploded like a geyser of blood and gore, the aftershocks of Tsunade's punch also mowing down several dozen trees behind him as well. I was right to not let my guard down against someone like you. Danzo's voice came from the side, greatly startling Tsunade, who had thought him dead. How is this possible? Genjutsu. Tsunade thought in disbelief. But she dismissed that thought right away. It was impossible for anyone to put her under a genjutsu. Her chakra control was too exquisite. She would have noticed the irregularity in her chakra flow instantly. Fu, keep your distance and wait for the perfect moment. Torun, you only need to touch her once. Akamichi, engage in close quarters. Everyone else, with ninjutsu and shuriken jutsu from mid-range. Danzo gave those commands using hand signs rather than words, and the Black Ops shinobi immediately sprung into action. Asterism. Old age really must have messed with your mental faculties, if you truly thought you could take me down with only this. Danzo had not underestimated Tsunade before starting this assassination attempt. He had gathered almost all the root members in the village at that moment just to kill her, over 30 of them, all at Tokubetsu Jonin or a higher level. But the reality in front of him was that like out of a nightmare. In less than 5 minutes, the slug Sanin had killed over 15 of his root in such an overly brutal and violent manner that even the slaves that he had brainwashed to serve him appeared to start showing signs of hesitance. Furthermore, 6 out of the 10 Sharingan embedded into his right arm had been closed permanently. Tsunade had already killed Danzo 6 times in less than 5 minutes. The Sannin were renowned across the elemental nations, and Danzo had always had accurate information in regard to Orochimaru and Jiraiya's level of strength, but Tsunade had faded into obscurity after the end of the Third Shinobi War, choosing to drink and gamble her money away. Danzo had never expected her to have cultivated such a terrifying level of strength. It did not pale in comparison to that of her now dead teammates at all. No, she's even more dangerous, Danzo thought as he watched how the bloody holes he created in Tsunade's thigh with his vacuum bullets wind technique were fully healed in a second. Tsunade's clothes had been turned to rags from how many times Danzo and his root had slashed, stabbed and hit her with their ninjutsu and weapons, but other than that, her body appeared in perfect condition. She was like an undying zombie. An undying zombie that could make huge craters and turn bodies into minced meat with a mere punch. Suddenly, Danzo let out a loud scream. Now, a shadow suddenly appeared on the ground, illuminated by the moonlight, and momentarily immobilized Tsunade. At the same time, Danzo went through a quick series of hand seals, and thick tree roots and vines burst from the ground to wrap tightly around her body. But Tsunade's physical strength was simply too powerful. Sweat started pouring down the Nara's face like a cascade, and Danzo also felt his Mokuden jutsu starting creaking and wailing. It was only a second before she broke completely free that a Yamanaka member of the root also yelled. Ninja art. Mind-body switch technique. Tsunade's body slumped a bit, but the Yamanaka shouted in a warning to his colleagues. She's resisting my jutsu, I couldn't catch her fully. You have 20 seconds at most. A huge Fuma shuriken appeared in Danzo's hands, and, as he blew air on its blades, he engulfed it with wind chakra before he threw it at Tsunade. The other root shinobi and kunoichi also threw a rain of kunai and shuriken from the distance, not taking the risk of getting close to her and ending up dead when she snapped out of Yamanaka's jutsu. But the Yamenka's estimations had been grossly exaggerated, as Tsunade didn't need even 5 seconds to snap out of his technique, and, letting out a loud battle cry, she bulldozed through the shadow, binding the Mokuden jutsu restraining her before clasping her hands with such strength that the shockwave burst from the clap of her palms was like a hurricane, completely blowing away all the projectiles sent her way, even Danzo's wind-coated Fuma shuriken. It was in the split second after she created that powerful shockwave that someone appeared at her back like a phantom, and the darkness of the night was temporarily chased away. Reikiri. Tsunade looked at the lightning-coated hand coming out of her chest in disbelief. Kakashi. Why? Was the only thing she could say before she stumbled forward and collapsed on her knees. Not missing out on the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, 2 of the still-alive root operative instantly shunshined next to her, their blades glinting in the moonlight as they both beheaded the slug Sannin at the same time. In spite of achieving his mission, Danzo felt no elation. The last shockwave that Tsunade created by clapping her palms had reaped the lives of another half a dozen of his root when their projectiles were flung back at them. In less than 10 minutes, a drunk Tsunade had all but obliterated his entire organization, and he had lost 6 of his Sharingan eyes too. This was too close. If I hadn't obtained Kakashi's loyalty before this assassination, we would have all died at her hands. Until the moment of her death, Tsunade didn't understand why had Kakashi suddenly turned on her and sided with Danzo. Seeing his shinobi attempting to clean the scene and remove all signs of battle, Danzo said, "We don't have any time left. The rest of the route can't hold off the Anbu for much longer. We have accomplished our objective. Leave everything as it is. Scatter." Asterism. It started raining again, he thought, and put on the hood of his gray cloak as he walked down one of the main streets of the village. In spite of the fact that it rained day and night, the people around him didn't seem as affected by it as he was. Young couples were sharing umbrellas as they window shopped, children were running around with no care in the world as they splashed rainwater at each other, and old people were standing under the eaves of their homes or on their porches, puffing from their pipes and drinking sake as they gossiped about the latest news with their neighbors and friends. It doesn't even feel like a hidden village, he thought as he compared it in his mind with Konoha. Although Konoha was one of the more relaxed hidden villages, it was still a common occurrence to see Chunins patrolling the streets and even some Anbu every once in a while. But Amegakure appeared more like a town of civilians. I miss my old place. As he compared AIM with Konoha, he couldn't lie to himself. He missed his former village. He missed his friends, his favorite ramen shop, Team 7's training ground, his little apartment, and he missed his Ba-chan and Sakura more than all. But whenever his mind went back to Tsunade and Sakura, anger would come back to him and his homesickness would vanish too. Damn it! Even 2 weeks after Konan broke him out of the Hazuka castle, Naruto could not let go of his anger. On the contrary, due to not having a way to release his pent-up frustration and due to a lack of activity or work to take his mind off his problems, his grudge and his anger only continued to fester and worsen inside of him. He had never felt like that before in his entire life. He had always been a predominantly happy person, with a sunny disposition, and a penchant for being quick to forgive and forget. So why couldn't he go back to being like he was before? What was the rage smoldering in his veins whenever his mind went back to Konoha? And why were his sweet memories of the village slowly being overrun by memories that he had forgotten he still had? Memories of other kids joining hands to rough him up in the academy. Memories of random villages spewing vitriolic words at him. Memories of Iruka often singling him out in the academy and using him as a negative example to his classmates. Memories of Kakashi giving Sasuke preferential treatment during the month before the last stage of the Chunin exams and dumping him to a useless Jonin who hated his guts. Memories of Konoha completely ignoring his incredible feat of defeating Gaara and the fully manifested Ikibi and not promoting him to the rank of Chunin. And the torrent of bad memories wouldn't stop at that. Scenes of Jiraiya throwing him off the cliff or purposely enraging him to the point of nigh madness just to bring out Kyuubi's chakra. Memories of Jiraiya ditching him in order to fool around with hookers, the numerous times Sakura punched him for even the slightest inconvenience he caused her, the memory of Kiba often mocking him and putting him down for his dream, or the memory of Akamaru taking a piss on his face while he was sleeping, etc. It was as if until then he had looked at the world through a pair of rose-tinted glasses, but now that he took them off he couldn't tear his eyes away from the ugliness that he had overlooked before. It was as if a side of his personality that he had forcefully shut down up until that moment was now finally coming to the surface and trying to take over. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Outside of his control, his eyes gained a blood-red color and the thin birthmarks on his cheeks became darker as his rage facilitated Kyuubi's chakra's infiltration into his system. I can't continue like this. Naruto thought, and his steps quickened. I have to find something to do or else I'll go crazy. And going crazy was the last thing he needed at that moment. I can't inconvenience Konan any more than I already do. He wasn't exactly the most capable person when it came to matters related to money and the economy, but even he understood that Amegakure was currently not in a good spot. He didn't want to make more problems for Konan. The Land of Rain didn't have a daimyo to sponsor the hidden village in it, and the country itself was completely isolated from the outside world. There was no diplomatic contact with their neighbors, not even merchants were allowed to pass AIM's borders. Under Nagato Uzumaki's rule, the village hidden in the rain had experienced a period of development, peace, and wealth like never before in its entire history. However, Nagato was dead and Konan was no longer part of the Akatsuki either. With AIM completely isolated from their neighbors and with its previous source of income gone, Akatsuki's activities, the village's economical situation was in dire straits. Ero Sennin died almost 3 months ago, but the destruction left by his battle with Nagato is still here. They haven't repaired anything. Thinking of that, Naruto was suddenly struck by an idea. What if I helped Konan with repairing that damage? It seemed like a good way for him to repay her for what she had done for him. After my friends in my village abandoned me, she's the only one who took my side. In his darkest hour, Konan had been the only person to come to his rescue. Helping her out was the least he could do to show his gratitude. Suddenly invigorated by finding a new goal for himself, Naruto's spirits rose as he broke into a shinobi sprint towards the tallest tower located at the center of the jungle of steel and concrete known as the Hidden Village in the Rain. As Pain's tower appeared in his sight, Naruto's sprint gradually slowed to a walking pace. Although in Konoha he used to not care about his manners and often burst into Sandame's and Tsunade's office without even knocking, that was due to his familiarity with them. In AIM, he subconsciously restrained himself from acting like that. I need to speak to Konan. Can you tell her that I am here? Naruto said to the two shinobi that could be seen standing guard in front of the doors leading to Konan's office. Please wait a moment, one of them replied politely and, after knocking twice on the door, he went inside to let Konan know of his arrival. Not for the first time since he arrived in Omegakure, Naruto was inwardly taken aback by people's attitude towards him. He was not used to others treating him so politely. Omegakure was completely shut off from the outside world, so there was nobody except for Konan who knew his real identity. However, everyone that was aware of the fact that he was in Konan's good graces was treating him with their utmost respect. It made him understand all the more just what kind of position Pain and Konan were holding in their subjects' hearts. Tenshi-sama agreed to your request. Please follow me, the guard said when he returned and opened the door wider for Naruto to come in. Despite how much more modern and technologically advanced Omegakure looked with its tall metallic skyscrapers and its intricate systems of pipes compared to Konoha, Konan's office didn't look much different from Hokage's office that he was familiar with. To the right of the room, there was a gray desk with rounded corners and a black leather chair, while on the opposite side, windows as large and as wide as the office itself offered a great view of the Hidden Village's cityscape. Hello, Naruto. Is something the matter? Is there something you need? Konan momentarily put down the piece of paper she was reading and looked up at him. At the same time, she signaled her shinobi to leave them alone. I've been thinking, is there anything I can help you with? Naruto asked. Konan adopted a pondering expression as she put her elbows on the desk and interlocked her fingers. What brought this on? Has anyone given you a hard time? No, he said quickly. Everyone is so polite that it's weird. I just wanted to do something, anything, to be of help. Seeing Konan keeping silent, he added. I saw the place where Ero Sennin and Nagato fought. I was thinking, maybe I could try to clean it up. If you had to hire someone, you'd need a few dozen of people and it'd take weeks just to move away the debris. But I can make hundreds of shadow clones, I'd get it done in no time. He said and grinned. Konan stood up from her seat and went to the large windows, gazing at the sight of the village below. I appreciate your thoughts, but it would be better if you waited until tomorrow morning. It's getting late and from today onwards, there will be a curfew starting from 8 o'clock. Curfew? You mean like a rule for people not to come out of their homes after that hour? As Konan put her hands behind her back, unintentionally making her chest stand out, Naruto realized that it was the first time he was seeing her without her Akatsuki cloak. However, he quickly tore his eyes away from her and looked at the village below as well. I have no reason to hide it from you, Naruto. AIM is not in a great situation currently. Ever since we killed Hanzo almost 6 years ago, Nagato chose to isolate AIM completely from the outside world, and it has worked for us due to how lucrative our activities as Akatsuki have been. Interpreting Naruto's look as a form of reproach, she explained. Long before Akatsuki started hunting down Jinchuriki, we've been an elite group of mercenaries taking on all kinds of missions. Many hidden villages frequently hired our services, and a large part of that income came to Omegakure. Hidden villages used to hire Akatsuki? Naruto said, scandalized. Yes, Konan said, her tone never changing from the beginning until now. For example, Tsuchikage was one of our biggest customers. Sunagakure often employed our services as well. We've even made business with Konoha too at some point. But with Nagato dead and Akatsuki effectively disbanded, that significant source of income has disappeared. Taking Naruto's silence as a sign to continue, Konan said. We are more than self-sufficient when it comes to food, clothes, and other products necessary for our daily lives. Before the Shinobi Wars brought AIM to ruin, the Land of Rain used to be one of the biggest exporters of rice, fish, and canned food. Nevertheless, there are also things that we could never make by ourselves, such as electricity. Over the past 6 years, we have been using the deposits of coal stockpiled before, during Hanzo's reign, but those deposits are now dwindling. And not only that, we don't have the funds to buy new resources, we don't have from to buy either. Naruto had never given any thought to such things before. He hadn't known how electricity was created, and he had never realized how many troublesome and difficult things the leader of a village had to handle. Can't AIM trade something else for that thing instead of money? You said the Land of Rain has plenty of food, no? The Land of Wind is a desert. I think they could buy lots of food because they can't grow anything there, Naruto said, trying to come up with a solution on the spot. Konan let out a soft sigh. We haven't engaged in official diplomacy and commerce with our neighboring countries in almost 6 years, Konan said. Furthermore, even if we had the means to trade for coal, now that the world knows that Akatsuki came from the Land of Rain, who would want to do business with us? But Naruto suddenly came closer to her and said energetically. I think I can help with that. Gaara, the cage, is my friend. But, does the Land of Wind have coal? Konan shook her head as she said. The Land of Wind doesn't have coal, but they have rich reserves of natural gas and oil. But Akatsuki captured Gaara and he died. What makes you think he'd ever want to trade with a Megakure? Gaara is my friend. I'm sure that but his words remained stuck in his throat. He was unable to continue when he thought that it was also his friends that sent him to prison despite that he was innocent. Nevertheless, he shook his head and tried to smile when he saw Konan looking at him with concern. The next day. Are you sure about this? You should know that Konoha won't give up on their Jinchuriki that easily, Konan said. I have to at least try. I can't just stay hidden in AIM all the time and I want to help you, he said with a small smile and rubbed the back of his head. Thank you, Naruto, she said and smiled softly at him. For the first time since he came to a Megakure, Naruto saw Konan smile. That gentle smile on her porcelain doll-like face was like a ray of sun peeking through the clouds. He was momentarily stunned. You helped me when nobody would, Naruto said. I'll do anything in my power to return the favor. Moving his eyes away from her face with difficulty, he looked at the scroll in her hands. Give this to the cage, it's my official letter as the leader of a Megakure. But don't reveal everything about a Megakure's situation to him, even if he's your friend. I understand. Losing a Jinchuriki is a heavy blow to a hidden village. Konoha won't just let you be. Although you said you trust the cage, Suna and Kohona are allies after all. You never know what he might do. Stay sharp. Stay safe. Naruto's first intention was to retort that Gaara would never do something like that, but he remained silent. If Gaara was forced to choose between Sunagakure's well-being and his friendship with him, Naruto was not confident that Gaara would choose him. He was not an expert in history and politics, but he knew that war being started over a Jinchuriki or a tailed beast was not impossible, far from that. Konoha and Kumo almost went to war when Kumo's diplomat was killed by Hinata's father. The ownership of 9 tails was far more important than that. Despite that his robes were covered in blood and the white bandages covering his arm and face were stained with dirt and sweat, Shimura Danzo had an expression of bliss, peace, and happiness on his face. Leaning back as far as he could in the Hokage's comfortable Hokage, he watched over the still sleeping village through the large windows of the office. For how many years had he yearned for this seat? For how long had he fought to step out of the shadows and lead the village hidden in the leaf from the light? Today, his dream had finally come true. Without his knowledge, over an hour passed as he basked in the feeling of having finally accomplished his wish. By now, the darkness started fading away. It was almost like a metaphor for his life. His days of walking through the darkness were over. From now on, he would step proudly into the sun and lead the village to a new era of prosperity. He would be the one to make Konoha great again. Beautiful, he found himself letting out a sigh as he admired the sight of the first rays of sun shining from beyond the Hokage monument and illuminating the village below. Beautiful, indeed. When he heard that voice coming from behind him, Danzo jumped up to his feet as if electrocuted. It was almost comical how he had turned around robotically before uttering out with a stutter. Impossible. I see you've gotten quite comfortable in my chair. As the newcomer stepped closer to the desk, Danzo's face became as white as a sheet of paper. How are you still alive? Your heart was obliterated. I saw you getting beheaded. Danzo shouted as he forcefully ripped the bandages covering his right eye and glared at her with his Sharingan. Anbu. He screamed when he realized that it wasn't a genjutsu that he was seeing. Your Black Ops shinobi are all dead, Tsunade said and raised her hand to show him that it was covered with fresh blood. You will pay with your blood for what you did, Danzo. I swear it on my life. A smoke bomb suddenly went off and the sound of glass being broken was heard as Danzo jumped through the window before he used a body flicker technique to run away. You won't escape. She screamed enraged. My name isn't Tsunade if I won't rip apart your limbs one by one today. You and each one of the traitors that attacked me last night, none of you will be spared. The floor of the Hokage office suddenly cracked like a spiderweb and collapsed in a heap of rubble as Tsunade jumped away with all her strength, leaving a sonic boom behind. Danzo just came out from his body flicker movement when someone unexpectedly grabbed him by the back of his high-collared robe and he felt the air leave his lungs as he was suddenly lifted up and thrown away like a cannonball, all the way to the outskirts of the village, into the woods. But his decades of experience as a shinobi allowed him to maintain his composure and he quickly went through a series of hand seals. A mass of soft-looking wooden vines came out of his body and encased him completely, like a cocoon. The wooden cocoon smashed into several dozen trees before it finally came to a stop. When the vines parted, Danzo crawled out of the cocoon seemingly unharmed, but he was so dizzy that he suddenly bent over and emptied the contents of his stomach on the ground. But when he straightened his back and wiped his mouth with his sleeve, Tsunade appeared in front of him like a phantom. By the time he saw that her hand was right in front of his face, it was too late. He had no time to react whatsoever as Tsunade's hand moved like a viper and plucked out his right eye, just like Danzo had done a decade ago when he stole that eye from Shisui. Danzo could only gnash his teeth when he saw Tsunade squash his precious Mangekyo Sharingan into a bloody paste, but he did not waste even a split second before he disappeared with another shunshin. I need to get away. I have to buy some time. He thought as he quickly went through another series of hand seals and momentarily stopped to slam his palm on the ground. The ground quaked and ruptured as tree roots and vines started growing out and loud sounds of wood creaking were heard as a gigantic creature of wood came to life. That technique was a pale imitation of Senju Hashirama's wood giant, but even then, it was enough to make most shinobi and kunoichi that saw it become weak in the knees. It drained an enormous amount of chakra to cast that technique, but Danzo did not have a choice at that moment. If he did not buy some time to take off the shackle sealing his Sharingan arm, he wouldn't be able to cast Izanagi. And without Izanagi, he did not have any chance of surviving the enraged slug Sanin. Right after he summoned the wood giant, Danzo stopped and ripped the bandages covering his right arm, revealing the golden bracers encasing it. He quickly pushed one of the bolts out and he was in the middle of taking out the second two when a huge hole was smashed open into the wood giant, obliterating it. Damn it! Danzo cursed in panic as he tried to take out the third and last bolt holding the golden bracers shut. However, He could only watch in disbelief as his right arm fell on the blanket of leaves covering the ground. He had not been able to take out the third bolt before Tsunade chopped his arm from the shoulder. "I told you I would kill you," Tsunade said in a dark voice and kicked him in the gut with enough strength to only make him fall on the ground coughing in pain, not to kill him. "But I'm a woman of my word, so I won't let you have an easy death. I promised I'd rip your limbs one at a time, didn't I?" Putting her foot on his chest, she suddenly yanked on his left arm, ripping it out from the shoulder too and making him scream out in agony. She was about to go onto the next limb, one of his legs, when she saw black ink starting to pour out from his torso. "I may have let my guard down once, but it won't happen again," she said. The air appeared to distort around her right hand and the aura of yellow chakra enveloping her body became visible to the eye as she punched down with her entire strength. That terrible brute strength reduced Danzo's entire body into a paste of blood and the ground underneath them was turned into a massive crater. The shockwave from her monstrous strength alone flattened all the trees several hundred feet outside of the crater. With no medium to fuel it anymore, the self-destructing seal that Danzo had cast to take Tsunade to the grave together with him faded into nothingness too. Uncaring of the gore splattered all over the ground, Tsunade lay down on her back in exhaustion. The black marks covering her entire body sank back into the rhombus-shaped purple dot on her forehead and she closed her eyes as she tried to regain her breath and calm down her racing heart. She had not gone all out in a fight in years and she had never been as close to death as she was last night. "If Katsuyu had not reverse summoned me to Shikatsu Forest, I would have died." Unlike a few hours ago, since it was morning, a team of Chunins tasked with duty patrol that day appeared a few minutes later to investigate the disturbance. Sensing the chakra signatures of the incoming shinobi, Tsunade forced herself to stand up, reminding herself that it was not over. "I don't know how many had sided with Danzo last night and I don't know their identities either, but I won't rest until I purge Konoha of them all." Putting a hand over her chest, her eyes narrowed in anger. She didn't know the identity of all the masked shinobi, but she definitely recognized the lightning blade that had pierced her heart. She was going to make Kakashi pay with his life. The land of wind shared a border with the land of rain, but that did not mean that Naruto's trip from Omegakure to Sunagakure was short. Sunagakure was located deep into the land of wind's desert. It was only after nearly 4 days of arduous travel through the desert that he finally arrived in front of the huge sandstone walls surrounding the village hidden in the desert. "Identify yourself and state your reason for entering Sunagakure," one of the Chunin guarding the entrance to the village said. All 6 Suna shinobi were looking at him with an expression of vigilance on their faces, ready to draw their weapons at any moment. After Akatsuki's attack on the village and the kidnapping of Gaara, although nearly a year had already passed, they were still cautious and suspicious of any potential threats. Naruto pulled down the hood of his gray cloak, revealing his appearance to them. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I wish to speak with Gaara." "Uzumaki Naruto?" the Chunin in charge said in surprise. Although he was from a different village, Uzumaki Naruto was famous in Suna for having saved the life of their Kazekage. Furthermore, the news that Konoha had been saved from the leader of the Akatsuki by none other than Naruto had also traveled to the land of wind by now. Nowadays, he was known by them as the hero of the leaf. "We need to confirm your identity. Bear with us for a moment," the Chunin said. Making a one-handed ram seal, he pointed with his other hand at Naruto and let out a low shout, "Kai." It was only after they confirmed that his appearance was not a henge that they allowed him entry. Asterism. As he followed the Suna Chunin, unlike all the previous times he had visited Suna, Naruto took a good look at the village, from observing the way people were dressed and how they interacted with each other to the appearance of the streets, shops, and civilian buildings. Unlike Konoha, which was built in a fan shape with the Hokage monument as the head, or Omegakure with its skyscrapers and its grid street pattern, Sunagakure was built in a circular shape, with the cage's tower at the center and 8 tall and wide walls splitting the village into 8 symmetrical parts. It looks like Suna has recovered from the attack a year ago, Naruto said while they passed by a bustling bazaar filled with people selling, buying, and haggling over prices. Yes. Kage-Sama's diplomatic relationship with Konoha has done wonders for our village, the Suna shinobi said. Soon, they arrived at their destination, and after leaving Naruto in the care of Cage Tower's bodyguards, the Chunin returned to his post at the gates of the village. Asterism. Naruto. I had not expected you to come to Suna. But it's good to see you. Gaara said as he stood up from his seat and came to greet Naruto when he entered his office. Naruto found himself smiling at Gaara's warm welcome. It's good to see you too, Gaara, he said, and the two shook hands. How have you been? And how are Temari and Kankuro? Temari went on a trip to Konoha as my delegate. As for Kankuro, he is out on a mission. Naruto and Gaara had not spent that much time together, but, as Jinchuriki and his enemies turned friends, the two of them felt a connection with each other. For Gaara, in particular, Naruto was his savior. After inviting Naruto to take a seat, ever the honest and direct person, Gaara said. I heard what happened between you and Konoha. To think that there would be a day when Uzumaki Naruto, of all people, would become a rogue ninja, I could have never imagined it. The loyalty and love you had for your village was something I have not seen in many other people. And that's why their betrayal had cut all that much deeper, Naruto said curtly. Gaara took on a thinking posture as he interlocked his fingers and rested his chin on his hands. From what I understand, nobody really believed you were the culprit. From the beginning, everything was just a plan to bait Kusagaker into showing their cards and exposing their plot, said Gaara. But, as it was always the case after escaping from the Hazuka castle, every time he was reminded of how he was unjustly arrested and thrown into prison, Naruto couldn't keep his cool. The more he talked about it, the more he felt his ire rising. I find that hard to believe. And even if that was the case, why didn't anyone tell me anything? Did they really have that little trust in me? After all the times I've saved the village, after everything I sacrificed for them. Realizing that his voice was starting to resemble a shout now, Naruto suddenly stopped talking and looked to the side. After letting out a sigh, he said. Never mind that. Whatever was there between me and Konoha, it's all in the past. I didn't come here to talk about them. To everyone who knew him, Uzumaki Naruto was someone who always wore his emotions on his sleeve. He laughed when he felt like laughing, he screamed when he felt like screaming, and he punched people in the face when he felt like doing that too. It was unlike him to stop his outbursts and control his emotions like that, and Gaara didn't miss that change in his behavior either. A momentary silence was instilled. I came here as a diplomat, representing the land of rain, Naruto said after a while and took out a scroll from a pouch strapped to his waist. The land of rain, Gaara said, his eyes widening in surprise. Don't tell me, Naruto, did you ally yourself with Akatsuki? I understand you don't like Konoha anymore, but is your desire for vengeance so high that you'd even go as far as to seek Akatsuki's help? They're the ones who are trying to hunt down all the Jinchuriki. The Akatsuki isn't affiliated with the Land of Rain anymore, Naruto said. Konan, Pain's former right hand, has defected. And she is the one who broke me out of Hazuka Castle. When my friends and comrades abandoned me, she was the one who took my side. Gaara stood up from his seat and put his hands behind his back as he turned around to look at the village through the small circular windows of his office. Won't you at least take a look at the message in the scroll? Naruto asked. You're putting me in a very difficult position, Naruto, Gaara said. I received word from Konoha last week that they have started sending search parties for you. And now, not only are you a rogue nin, but you've also allied yourself with one of the former Akatsuki, and all of these things happened while the 5 great nations are about to have a Cage summit a few days from now. They can send whoever they want after me, I'm not going back, Naruto said resolutely. But why are the 5 nations having a cage summit? Why else? Because of the Akatsuki, of course, Gaara said, turning around to look Naruto in the eye. The Raikage's brother was hunted down by the Akatsuki. Specifically, Uchiha Sasuke was the one who captured him. Sasuke did, Naruto said, the tone of his voice and his facial expression not giving Gaara any hints in regards to his inner feelings. Yes, he had joined the Akatsuki, and they have already hunted down all the Jinchuriki except for you. And with his brother now dead too, the Raikage is hell-bent on going to war with the Akatsuki and annihilating them all, starting with a manhunt for Uchiha Sasuke, of course. The Naruto in Gaara's memories would have reacted in a very vocal manner to that news. Gaara would not have it put past him to even leave at that exact moment and go to speak to the Raikage in person and plead for Sasuke to be spared. However, the current Naruto in front of him was silent, not showing any outward reactions. You're a lot calmer than I was expecting, Gaara said. Eventually, we all reap what we sow, was what the blonde said after a while when he realized that Gaara was waiting for him to say something. Are you not worried about him? I thought he was your best friend. I chased after him for years to bring him back to Konoha. But I have defected from the village myself, what's the point in still trying to chase him down? Naruto said and shrugged. As for being friends, I don't know about that. What do you mean? I thought I had many friends, I thought that the entirety of Konoha was my family, Naruto said. But you know as well how that worked out for me. Sasuke shoved a lightning blade into my chest, and Konoha threw me into prison. There's only so much one can take, I am only human too. With this kind of friends and family, I don't need enemies anymore. After saying that, Naruto stood up from his seat and took the scroll back from the desk. Are you leaving already? Gaara asked in surprise. I can see you don't want to talk about Omegakure. Honestly, I half expected it to go that way, Konan told me so too. After all, you were killed by the Akatsuki, and you're also the Kazekage, you've got to think about the Suna's prosperity first of all. I'll be on my way. Stay safe, Kazekage-sama, he said with a short bow and left. Gaara half raised his hand, wanting to stop him from leaving, but he gave up in the end. As much as it hurt him for Naruto to subtly tell him that he doesn't see him as a friend anymore but as the leader of a village, it was true. He was the Kazekage. He couldn't put his personal feelings and relationships before the well-being of his village. Developing a diplomatic relationship with Omegakure, Akatsuki's country of origin, and aiding a fugitive Jinchuriki like Naruto while Konoha was searching for him would not be in the best interest of Suna. Not in the least. Asterism. It was night. After an entire day of traveling through the desert, Naruto finally stopped and set up camp at the base of a cairn, a pile of rocks marking the road through the desert. The nights in the desert were very cold, so he started a fire and basked in its warmth as he ate some field rations for dinner. You're such a child. What you speak of are all fantasies. A ninja must sometimes make very harsh decisions. The words that Uchiha Itachi had spoken to him through a genjutsu in the past came to Naruto's mind as he sat down by the campfire. Sasuke had joined Akatsuki. Does that mean that one day he will come to kill me too? Naruto clenched his teeth in frustration and anger at himself as he looked back on his past actions and behavior. He could still vividly recall what Jiraiya had told him after the failed Sasuke retrieval mission a few years ago. It's not just jutsu or power. If you're a ninja, develop eyes that can make the right judgment. And if you're going to live as a ninja, become wiser. This world is no place for a fool. That's the reality. It was a rare moment of seriousness on Jiraiya's part, a rare moment when the old pervert showed the wisdom that lay underneath his degeneracy. But he had been too full of himself, claiming that he would figure out a way to bring Sasuke back even if he had to do it all alone. His power had grown immensely since 3 years ago. He had become one of the strongest shinobi in Konoha, No, one of the strongest even in the world at large. However, his mentality had not matured as fast as his power had grown. He had kept on living like an overly optimistic fool, blind and oblivious to the reality of the world he lived in. And that was also why Jiraiya's idealistic dreams had captured him so, making him believe that, one day, peace could be achieved by people understanding each other. It was only after the Hazuka Castle incident that he was finally snapped back to reality and saw the ninja world for what it truly was, a place ruled by only three things: strength, self-interest, and hatred. However, it was in this kind of twisted world that Konan kept her promise and came to his rescue. Yahiko and Nagato meant everything to me. Yahiko's dream, and Nagato's dream, if both of their dreams had been passed to you, then you now embody their dreams. Nagato put his faith in you. So will I. We, the Hidden Rain, will pursue their dreams together with you. Despite Omegakure's precarious situation and the fact that both Konoha and Akatsuki were now hunting him down, Konan still took him to aim and sheltered him. But I'm not the same person I used to be, he muttered. Real peace? I don't have an answer to that. I've never had one. When Nagato confronted him, Naruto didn't know what to say. He did not have an answer back then either. It was only his willingness to forgive Nagato and his optimism that convinced the older Uzumaki to entrust his dream of peace to him. However, now that that optimism was gone, Naruto realized how unrealistic his and his sensei's dream of peace had been. He felt as if he was betraying Nagato and Konan's expectations of him. They had chosen to believe in him and his ideals, but how could he live up to those ideals when he didn't even believe in them anymore? I'm sorry. I'm not who I used to be. I can't bring you the peace that you thought I would. However, as he stared at the brightly burning flames of the campfire, Naruto made a vow. Konan and her people, I will stop at nothing to protect them. Whoever threatens them, be it Sasuke or Akatsuki or even Konoha, I will destroy them. He didn't believe in world peace anymore. But he did believe he could achieve peace and prosperity for the land of rain. Asterism. The day after Naruto's diplomatic visit to Sunagaku, a messenger bird flew through the open window in the Hokage's office. A message? From Suna. Tsunade said in wonder when she saw the sigil on the scroll. But after unfurling it and reading its contents, she loudly called out for her assistant. Shizune. Yes, Tsunade-sama. Shizune quickly answered her call, having recognized the urgency in her voice. Send word for Kakashi, Yamato, Sakura, Sai, and Team Guy to come to my office. Asterism. Hokage Dono. Greetings. Today, on the 27th of September, Uzumaki Naruto came to Sunagaku as a diplomat on behalf of Omegaku. For obvious reasons, I had to refuse him. Unfortunately, he left right after, and there was nothing I could do to hold him. From my conversation with him, I have learned that he now resides in the land of rain. I ask of you both as an ally of Konoha and as a friend of Naruto, please proceed with caution. He is not the Naruto we used to know. Not anymore. Best regards, Gaara, the 5th Case. When Tsunade finished reading Gaara's short letter out loud, a silence so deep that one could hear a pin drop was instilled in the Hokage's office. I've been sending teams of Chunin and even Anbu searching for Naruto's whereabouts, but we couldn't find him for weeks. Who would have thought he would go to the Hidden Rain of all places? Omegaku. Sakura said alarmed. Isn't that the place where Akatsuki came from? Why would he go there? That's what you need to find out, Tsunade said curtly, and Sakura became silent. Everyone straightened their posture and listened intently to what she was saying. Ever since Danzo and his Black Ops organization tried to assassinate her, it appeared as though something changed at Tsunade. Unlike her easygoing and slob-like behavior from before, these days there was a sharpness in her eyes and such an intimidating pressure that even Sakura, her pupil, didn't dare to act up or ask needless questions anymore. Neji, your job in this mission is to ascertain whether Naruto has been placed under a genjutsu or not. Yes, Hokage-sama. Neji acknowledged her respectfully and bowed. Sakura. Why yes. The girl replied and stood to attention. Naruto has always had a weakness for you. Your job is to convince him to come back home peacefully. Yes. Kakashi, Guy, and Rock Lee. Should Sakura fail to convince Naruto with words, your job will be to take him back by force. Yes, Hokage-sama, the three replied seriously. Yamato, you are to support them from the side. You have my permission to use your most powerful Mokudan technique to restrain Naruto if he taps into Kyuubi's power. Understood. Then, what about me? Tenten asked meekly when she saw that everyone was given a task except for her. The girl involuntarily flinched when Tsunade's eyes focused on her next. From what I understand, you've made great progress in your mastery of Fuinjutsu. Should Naruto need to be subdued and taken back by force, your job is to use your Fuinjutsu and seal his chakra. I understand. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Tenten said, her exuberant voice making Tsunade raise her eyebrows at her. What the slug Sanin wasn't aware of was that she was like an idol for most kunoichi in Konoha, and not only. The mere fact that her hard work and progress were acknowledged by none other than Lady Tsunade was enough to fill Tenten with happiness. This is an S-ranked mission, Tsunade said, and the younger shinobi and kunoichi in the room gulped at her words. Prepare yourself for the trip today. Tomorrow, at dawn, you will be leaving for the land of rain. You are dismissed. Hi. Everyone answered in a chorus and proceeded to leave the Hokage's office one by one. Kakashi, stay behind after everyone leaves, Tsunade said, and Kakashi stopped in his tracks. Once there were only the two of them left in the office, Tsunade stood up from her desk and walked in front of him. Even with his many years of Anbu experience and numerous dangerous situations in the line of duty, Kakashi couldn't help the way his body subconsciously tensed at her proximity. It reminded him of how he felt the last time he had met Orochimaru face to face alone. I spared your life because Hiashi Hyuga vouched for you, saying that you had been under an extremely powerful genjutsu when you attacked me. I am thankful for that, Kakashi said with a short bow. Nevertheless, I don't trust you anymore. Make no mistakes, Kakashi. Should you ever raise your hand against your Hokage again, genjutsu or not, you'll become nothing but a smear of blood on my fist. Is that clear? Crystal, Kakashi said. As for Naruto's retrieval, this mission is your chance to redeem yourself in my eyes. Do not fail me again, Kakashi. I won't, Hokage-sama. Good. I will be leaving for the 5-Cage Summit in the Land of Iron today at noon. I hope to hear news of your success by the time I'm back. This mission is far bigger than just bringing Naruto back. Now that Eight Tails Jinchuriki has been captured as well, Naruto is the only one left. Not only for his safety but for the well-being of the whole world at large, we need to protect him from the Akatsuki. We must not let them capture him, no matter the cost. They've already gotten the other Biju, we can't let them get their hands on the 9 tails as well. Tall towers of concrete and metal, countless power lines, a chaotic system of pipes, a sky covered by heavy gray clouds, and the unending rain pouring down every day, that was a megacure. It didn't have the beautiful weather of Konoha, the picturesque appearance of Suna, or the beauty of Kumogakure. However, to Konan, a megacure was her home. Even as the torrential rain poured from above, Konan revealed a soft smile as she looked at the scenery below. Several hundred people were hard at work, pooling their efforts together as one to accomplish their objective. But those several hundred people were all, in fact, one person. They were Uzumaki Naruto and his shadow clones. After coming back from Sunagakure, in spite of how tired he was from the arduous trip through the desert, he went straight to work. Although Konan had already expected that result, Naruto was so disappointed with himself for not managing to secure a trading agreement that he couldn't even look her in the eyes. Cleaning up the massive wreckage and destruction left by Jiraiya's battle against Nagato was the only helpful thing he could think of doing at that moment. I think the Land of Wave would be willing to help me, but they don't have any resources that a Megakure needs. From what Konan told me, their economy is based on fishing. Naruto thought as he used an Udama Rasengan to grind to dust a particularly large piece of a broken concrete wall. He was trying to think of other solutions besides Sunagakur, but he could not readily come up with anything useful. Then, there's the Land of Snow, but it's such a small country, I wonder, do they have anything there? There's also the Land of Demons, but I don't know much about it, and Konan doesn't either. It's so far away that it takes more than a week just to get there. Buried in work and his own thoughts, Naruto didn't notice Konan watching him from the top of a nearby tower. And he didn't notice the sudden arrival of another person either. Asterism. I've been wondering where the Kyuubi Jinchuriki had disappeared to. I've heard about his defection from Konohagakure, but I did not expect to see him here of all places. That is great. It's like hitting two birds with one stone. A deep voice unexpectedly came from behind, but Konan did not appear to be surprised by it. What are you here for? She asked as she turned around to face him. The black cloak with red clouds on it and the one-eyed orange mask, it was none other than Toby, or, as she and Nagato knew him to be, Uchiha Madara. Where have you hidden Nagato's corpse? You won't find him here, Konan said, and her body dispersed into a flutter of countless paper butterflies. But Toby did not lose track of her. Following her chakra signature, he disappeared in a swirl and teleported right in front of Konan when her body materialized again. You've run away quite far. I thought you'd team up with Naruto to fight against me. After all, someone who even managed to defeat Pain is not an opponent I can take on lightly either, he said. Do you think I didn't know one day it would come to this? I knew that you would appear before me. I've been waiting for you so I could stop you. With or without Naruto here, I will take you down. A particularly strong gale blew, and a large wave almost submerged the two pieces of wreckage that Konan and Toby were standing on. They were in the middle of a gigantic lake. The lake of a Megakure was so vast that it would not be an exaggeration to compare it to an inland sea. Just because you used to be a comrade, don't think I'll show you any mercy. The Akatsuki does not put up with traitors. But I have one question. Why would such loyal members as you and Nagato both betray me? You and Nagato both approved of my Eye of the Moon plan. If you lost to Uzumaki Naruto, then it couldn't have been helped. But, not only that Nagato sacrificed his life by casting Rinne Tensei for Naruto's sake, but you also broke him out of the Hazuka castle and are now offering him shelter here, in AIM. Seeing Konan keep silent, Toby pressed on. Naruto Uzumaki, you think he's that worthy? He is the light, Konan said. That's why we all can carry the flower of hope. Is he now? Even after he defected from the village? Is he still the same after what Konoha did to him? Ah, no matter. Once I capture you, I'll make you tell me everything. The Rinnegan was never Nagato's, to begin with. I am the one who lent it to him as a child. Now, I shall take back what is mine. The moment he said that, two large paper wings came out of Konan's back, and she burst up in the air like a bird of prey. Hiding her body amidst a myriad of deadly paper blades, Konan dived towards him with no hesitation. Using a manifold attack, she intends to find a chance to attack me when I materialize. Fine. I know she must have some sort of strategy. But I'll take her on. I'll accept her challenge, Toby thought confidently. Several hundred paper blades passed through his body before he suddenly materialized himself and caught Konan in a chokehold. There you are, he said triumphantly, activating his Kamui ability to suck her into the other dimension. However, by the time he noticed her trap, it was too late. Right as he activated his Kamui, several dozen paper bombs were simultaneously detonated, creating a great explosion. I will take you down with me to the afterlife, Konan thought, willing to sacrifice herself for the sake of killing him. Asterism. Mon, is this rain ever going to end? Naruto thought in chagrin while he and his clones were carrying rocks and other pieces of debris. The work was difficult enough as it was, but the heavy rain soaking him to the bone and hurting his visibility made it even harder. Dispelling his clones, Naruto staggered as he made his way to the tower to take shelter from the rain. Being able to create hundreds of shadow clones was great, but the drawback wasn't light, to say the least. All the exhaustion accumulated by his clones was transferred to him after they were dispelled. As he huddled up in a corner, his clothes drenched from the rain and his body dead tired, the sound of rain almost lulled him to sleep. But then, a loud explosion booming in the distance made him jump to his feet. "What's going on?" he said, and, not minding the rain anymore, he swiftly ran to the top of the tower to get a bird's-eye view of the village. Even with his high vantage point, however, due to the heavy rain, he couldn't see traces of an explosion in the vicinity. But then, a chain of explosions started blasting one after another, eventually melding into one single extremely loud sound. "It's coming from the lake," he thought and threw himself off the tower, starting to run as fast as he could. As he sprinted towards the lake at his highest speed, what Gaara had told him several days ago came to his mind. "I received word from Konoha last week that they have started sending search parties for you." Shit. He cussed and forced himself to run even faster. Did Konoha send a team to attack AIM because of me? He wouldn't be able to forgive himself if something happened to the land of rain because of him after everything that Konan had done for him. But when he finally came out from between the sky-high towers and saw the expansive lake of Omegakure, he involuntarily stopped in his tracks, stunned at the sight before him. As far as his eyes could see, an enormous crack seemed to have ruptured the large lake in two. "My God," he muttered under his breath when he realized that, at that moment, the lake of Omegakure did not consist of water but that it was made up of paper bombs. It was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen until then. Just imagining what it would be like to fall into the crack that split the sea of paper bombs made his back break into a cold sweat. It was as if the apocalypse had come. It took no more than 10 minutes for the billions of paper bombs to finish exploding, but for Naruto, it felt like an eternity. Asterism. My sacred paper emissary technique has come undone. I didn't expect it to take this much chakra, Konan said as she knelt on the surface of the water, trying to catch her breath. At least, Madara is dead. Toby completed her sentence as he unexpectedly appeared from behind. A disturbing squelching sound was heard as he stabbed a metallic rod into her back, piercing out through her stomach with it. The shock of seeing Toby still alive was so great that Konan almost didn't feel the pain from being stabbed momentarily. "How? You should be dead. I ran the simulations over and over. I was sure that this sequence would work." Toby pulled his makeshift weapon out of her back and kicked her away. "Izanagi, I told you not to underestimate the visual prowess of an Uchiha, girl. You have miscalculated. Just like you miscalculated when you chose to betray me for Naruto. In the afterlife, you and Nagato can commiserate about being fooled by Naruto's nonsense." Although he was speaking confidently, Toby too was on his last legs. The first explosion when he tried to suck Konan in with his Kamui had made him lose his right arm and left him greatly wounded, and in order to survive Konan's 600 billion paper bombs, he had to sacrifice his left eye too in order to activate Izanagi and rewrite his fate. There is no such thing as true peace. There is no such thing as hope. Nagato only believed in Naruto because he wanted to find solace in his pathetic existence. Stumbling away as she held onto her bleeding wound, Konan suddenly turned around and raised her hands up. A huge paper chakram took form above her hands, and Obito inwardly cursed at her resilience. "Just like I believed in Nagato, I will also believe in Naruto," she said as she hurled the large chakram at Toby. "I will be a pillar to support his dream. Nagato and I never truly believed in your goal. You are darkness. Just like you used us for your plan, we have been using you too all along." And with that, half of her body dispersed into a swarm of shurikens. Even with the visual prowess of his Sharingan, it took Toby several good moments to dodge and block all the projectiles thrown at him. But he was slowly closing the distance as he did that. Having almost no chakra left and with a fatal wound in her stomach, when he finally closed the distance and got to her, this time around, Konan couldn't disperse with another paper body flicker to avoid his lunge. You called me darkness. Well then, I shall make you wilt, Toby said, his voice filled with killing intent as he grabbed her by the neck and strangled her. He had never expected he would almost die and be forced to use Izanagi in a place like this. He had never taken Konan seriously, much less think that she had designed the almost perfect strategy to defeat him. Konan. A scream came from the side, and Toby only had time to turn his head towards the voice before someone's shin smashed into his forehead. The strength behind that head kick was so high that Toby was sent flying and stumbling for over a dozen meters over the water like a skipping stone. Konan. Konan. Are you okay? Konan. Answer me. Naruto said in a panic as he stopped her body from sinking into the water and took her in his arms. What did you do to her, asshole? He screamed at Toby, who was now getting back to his feet. What did you attack her for? Despite the orange mask that was still obscuring the bottom half of his face, Naruto could tell that the Uchiha was enraged. I had not been prepared for this scenario, Toby said, but it was more to himself rather than to Naruto. Due to not taking Konan seriously, he had almost paid the price with his life, and, on top of it all, he had not foreseen the situation where he would have to face the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki in battle while he was in such a deplorable state, on his last legs while missing an eye and an arm. I took you too lightly. I should have known you would have an ace up your sleeve. After all, you were a member of the Akatsuki too. You have won this time, Konan. Savor the victory while it lasts because I will be back. You can't run from me. You cannot hide from me. I will be back soon, and I will take what is mine. Leaving those parting words behind, Toba's body disappeared in a swirl as he teleported away. Asterism. A few hours later, Naruto was sitting in the hospital's waiting room, wrenching his fingers from worry while Konan was undergoing surgery. Fortunately, Toba's metal rod had not damaged the spine, and it had hit too low to puncture the lungs or other vital areas, but it was still a grievous wound. It had broken a rib and perforated her stomach too. It wasn't Konoha. It was the Akatsuki, and they weren't after me, but they were after Konan. Why did they attack her? His first thought was that maybe it was vengeance because she had left the organization, but he dismissed that thought when he remembered Toba's last words, I will be back soon and I will take what is mine. What does Konan have that he wants? When the door of the operating room opened and a middle-aged man wearing a medic's garments came out, Naruto jumped up from his seat. How is she? Was the surgery successful? Is she okay? Tell me. Everything is fine, the doctor said, and he subconsciously smiled at seeing how worried he was for her well-being. The surgery was successful, and she will make a full recovery in due time. Thank God, Naruto said in relief. It was as if a weight had been lifted off his chest. Can I see her? You can, but she is still out of it. The anesthesia has not worn off just yet. I understand, Naruto said, but before he could go inside the operating room to see Konan, the doctor said. Young man, thank you for saving her life. Lady Konan is far more important for a Megakure than you might think. After Pain-sama's passing, she is all that stands between AIM and the three large powerful countries surrounding us. At this moment, she is irreplaceable. Inwardly, Naruto was surprised that the medic knew about Pain's death because Konan had kept that fact under wraps from the general population. He must be one of the higher-ranked shinobi in AIM, he thought. When my village and my friends cast me away, it was Konan who came to rescue me. Saving her life is the least I could do, Naruto said seriously. Also, before he passed away, I promised Nagato that I would bring peace to a Megakure. I want to protect Konan and a Megakure, they are the only things that I have left. The doctor patted him on the shoulder in understanding. Konoha's elders and the Hokage must have lost their minds if they cast aside someone like you. But their loss is our gain. We are happy to have you here, Uzumaki Naruto. Asterism. The smell of antiseptic and the sounds of monitoring machines in the background let Konan know even before opening her eyes that she was in the hospital. She was so groggy and drained that just opening her eyes felt like a chore. She had to blink several times before her eyesight finally focused, and the first thing she did was check what was the pain in her arm coming from. An IV was slowly pumping blood in her veins to replenish what she had lost. Taking in her surroundings, she realized that she was not alone in the hospital room. As her amber eyes fell on the boy snoozing with his head on the edge of her bed, her expression changed into a gentle smile. She had no doubts as to what would have happened if Naruto had not intervened when he did. Although her plan had been flawless and she had almost killed Madara, with her strategy, she had never imagined that the Sharingan would have such a ridiculous power, the ability to rewrite reality. All those paper bombs, wasted. Omegakure's precarious financial situation at the moment was not only due to its lack of commerce with its neighboring countries. Collecting over 600 billion paper bombs had cost her a fortune. Much of the Akatsuki funds that she and Nagato had saved up over the years were spent on buying those paper bombs. But it was all for naught. In the end, Madara escaped. But she shook her head to banish those thoughts for the moment. At least I am still alive. I owe Naruto my life, Konan thought, bringing her hand to caress his messy and spiky blonde hair. Although Naruto was exhausted from having worked in the rain with several hundred clones and then watching over Konan for many hours after her surgery, he was so concerned with her well-being that even when he finally fell asleep, it wasn't a deep slumber. The moment Konan put her hand on his head and caressed him, he woke up. However, he did not open his eyes. Her caresses were so gentle that he wanted her to never stop. Nobody had ever touched him in such a manner until then. Eventually, still anemic and tired from how much blood she had lost earlier that day, Konan fell asleep once again. Naruto did not move her hand away from his head. Instead, he continued lying with his head on the bed and put his hand on top of hers. Knowing that she had finally woken up and that she seemed to be fine, Naruto finally allowed himself to relax, and, in spite of the rather uncomfortable position, he was sitting on a stool lying with his head on the bed, he fell into a deep sleep this time. Asterism. As he woke up the next day, Naruto found himself in a completely different place than he remembered. Instead of being in Konan's hospital room, he was back in the room where he had lived ever since he had come to AIM. Once he was done with his morning rituals and put on a new change of clothes, he went to the canteen used by the personnel working in Pain's Tower to have breakfast. If there was one thing that the Land of Rain did not lack in the least, it was food. Omegakure had an abundance of rice, tomatoes, fish, and reptiles of all kinds. That being said, although he avoided dishes based on lizard meat and other oddities, he still had a rich meal. Soon after he was done, a masked shinobi, AIM's version of Anbu, he thought, came to his table and said, "Lady Konan requests your presence in her office as soon as possible." "Understood," Naruto replied, standing up. Asterism. Is it okay for you to be out of the hospital bed already? Was the first thing Naruto asked when he stepped into Konan's office. Naruto. You are here, she said as a form of greeting. I won't lie and say I'm already healed. But there are some things that I must tell you, some things that we must do that are far more important than my comfort. When he saw how she propped herself on the desk to stand up, he quickly went to her side and helped her. Don't push yourself too much, Naruto said. Don't worry, I am fine, Konan said, smiling at the concerned look on his face. If you want to go somewhere, I'll carry you instead. You're in no condition to walk so much or use your chakra now, Naruto said as he turned around and lowered his body for her to climb on his back. Konan was not the type to hesitate, beat around the bush, or pretend that she was embarrassed. She slowly leaned her body against his and wrapped her arms around his neck as she got on his back. Wrapping her legs around his waist when he stood up, she sighed in relief as she rested her chin on his shoulder. "Thank you, Naruto." Her breathy voice so close to his ear and the feeling of her womanly body flush against his back made his skin break into goosebumps. "You're welcome," he said, clearing his throat in embarrassment, inwardly hoping she did not notice how flustered he was at that moment. "So, where do you want to go? I will guide you. Follow my instructions." "Okay," he said, and, as he started walking, he grabbed onto her thighs to further support the weight of her body. "Make a right now," she said, and he did as he was told. "Now take that elevator. Press on the button leading to the basement." A few minutes into their walk, Naruto could not bear the silence anymore, so he asked, "How is your wound? Am I walking too fast? Does it hurt?" "It's not fully healed, but it hasn't opened. My paper jutsu helps greatly when it comes to bandaging and healing from stabbing or cutting wounds." "I see. It's good to hear that." After 2 minutes, Naruto tried to start a conversation again. "Why did that Akatsuki member attack you yesterday?" "He came after something that belonged to Nagato," she answered. "We are going there now to retrieve it." Asterism. Beautiful, Naruto uttered when the two of them finally arrived at their destination. It was a very tall and spacious hall with a dome ceiling supported by thick round columns. The orange and purple marble floor resembled the rings of a Rinnegan eye, and the bed of white paper roses and the exquisite carving of angels on the wall behind it gave it a stunning appearance. On the bed of white paper roses, two preserved bodies lay with their hands interlocked on their chests. They were Yahiko and Nagato. "You can put me down now," Konan said softly, and Naruto squatted to help her get back on her feet. Leaning on Naruto's forearm as she walked, Konan slowly led him to stand in front of Nagato. After a moment of silence, she said, "The masked member of the Akatsuki came here in order to steal Nagato's Rinnegan. But the Rinnegan does not belong to him. The Rinnegan belongs to Nagato. It is a national treasure of Omegakure. I cannot let it fall into his hands." "Who is that man? I saw he had a Sharingan eye, but, as far as I know, Sasuke is the only Uchiha left. Is he an Uchiha too, or did he steal the Sharingan from someone else?" Naruto asked. "He calls himself Uchiha Madara." "Uchiha Madara?" Naruto said in surprise. He had hardly paid any attention to the academy as a kid, but even he had heard of that name before. Didn't Uchiha Madara and the first Hokage die a very long time ago? I do not know whether he truly is Uchiha Madara as he claims or not. But he does have the Sharingan, and he is one of the most dangerous shinobi in the world. According to the information that Nagato and I have collected on him, he is the one who caused Kyuubi's rampage in Konoha on the day of your birth. He was behind the bloodline massacres of Kurigakure, and he had manipulated the Mizukage from the shadows with his genjutsu. Hearing her words, Naruto finally connected the dots. He had still not forgotten the warnings of his father's chakra remnants from a few months ago. He could still remember how the fourth Hokage told him to be wary of the man with the one-eyed mask. "If he's so dangerous, shouldn't we destroy the Rinnegan? We can't let him get his hands on such a powerful dujutsu. Nagato was the strongest shinobi I have ever seen in my life. The Rinnegan is too powerful to let it fall into the wrong hands." At his words, Konan bit her lower lip. Rationally, she knew that he was right. She also knew that Toby would be unable to proceed with his plan without the Rinnegan. He wouldn't be able to control the power of all the tailed beasts and the demonic statue of the outer path without it. "However, I can't do it. This is all that I have left of Nagato." She couldn't bear to destroy the last vestige of Nagato. As an orphan living in a cruel world riddled with war and death, Yahiko and Nagato were all that she had ever had. And, after Yahiko's death, she had grown to treasure Nagato even more than ever before. The two of them had been her family. Naruto didn't know what to say at that. Inwardly, he wondered what he would have done in her place, but he could not find an answer to that question right away. I cannot let the Rinnegan fall into Uchiha Madara's hands, but I can't bear to destroy it either. Saying those words, Konan turned to look at him and she took his hands in hers, her amber eyes peering into his. I want you to have it, Naruto. Konan, I don't know, Naruto stammered, overwhelmed by the importance of the request she had just made. You're carrying the dreams of both Yahiko and Nagato. You are their legacy. I want you to take Nagato's